Hi, I'm USA Today bestselling author Jennifer Youngblood. Thanks for joining me for one chapter a day, the Clean Romance Way. Today, I'm going to be reading Chapter 18 of The Cowboy and the Billionaire's Daughter. Please take a second to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Okay, so Gracie is distraught over Brooke's impending death. I have to admit, I'm a little distraught over it too. So let me read and see what happens. Chapter 18. Gracie felt like she'd been sucker punched. She looked at Gertrude as tears pooled in her eyes. Brooke can't die. She shook her head. No, that can't be right. I'm afraid it is, Gertrude said sadly. A piercing anger stabbed through Gracie at the injustice of it all. How can this be happening? Brooke's young and healthy. So were you. The sympathetic look on Gertrude's face was all too reminiscent of the look Sheldon had given her at the carnival. It certainly wasn't helping matters. But that's different. Really? How so? It was my time, but it's not her time. She's just starting to change, and she's finally found her true love. Her life is just beginning. Gertrude let out a sigh of resignation. I know, it's a lot for me to swallow too, but you and I both know that death isn't the end. Our Heavenly Father has a plan for Brooke, just as He has for us. We have to have faith that He knows better than we do. How can you be so accepting of this? It's so unfair. Gertrude gave her a wise smile tinged with sadness. We're merely angels, not deity. The days for each person are numbered by our Heavenly Father. He calls home those whom He calls. Who are we to question Him? But there must be something we can do to fix this. No, there isn't. Regret shimmered in her eyes. She hesitated, her jaw working. I want you to know how truly sorry I am. If I had known Brooke was going to die, I never would have assigned her to you. I was foolish. I took matters into my own hands and assigned you Brooke because I thought it would help you. This is all my fault. She removed her glasses, dabbing at her eyes. The anger slightly ebbed. We all make mistakes. Heaven knows I've made my share of them. She took a deep breath. And as much as I have to hate to admit this, it has been good for me to help someone I detested at first. Brooke's not as terrible as I thought she was. I mean, she's still a piece of work, but at least I understand where she's coming from. She looked at Gertrude, and that never would have happened if it hadn't been for you. Gertrude's lower lip trembled as she fought for composure. Thank you for saying that. A new thought struck Gracie as her eyes went large. Brooke's not going to become an angel in training, is she? I don't think I could handle that. Gertrude made a face. I certainly hope not. I don't think I could handle that. You're enough for me. Thanks, Gracie said dryly. They sat for a moment lost in thought. A bleak despair settled over Gracie as she tried to come to terms with the inevitable. How much time does Brooke have left? Gertrude shook her head and looked away. She grabbed hold of Gertrude's arm. How much time? Very little, I'm afraid. Brooke put a comforting hand on Nash's shoulder. How's your dad? He gave her a strained smile. A little better today. When Luther arrived at the hospital, the doctors discovered that he had had a mini-stroke. They kept him for 48 hours while they ran a barrage of tests and gave him medication to help prevent blood clots. Brooke had gone to the hospital a couple of times to check on Luther and to make sure that Nash was holding up okay. She felt awkward and out of place. Cynthia was downright rude, letting her know by her sullen attitude that she was not welcome. Brooke had tried to do everything she could from afar to let Nash know she cared, but he was distant, and she feared he was pulling away from her. She sat down beside him on the sofa. How are you holding up? The lines around his eyes and mouth looked deeper than normal, and there was a fine line of stubble across his jaw. Furthermore, his eyes were bloodshot like he had not slept in days. Myrna told me this morning that the doctors are hopeful Luther will make a full recovery if he takes it easy. He swallowed. Yeah, the trouble with him is getting him to take it easy. He got up this morning at the crack of dawn trying to get dressed, determined that he was going to check on Crew and the guys to make sure they were doing everything correctly. Cynthia had to practically get a bullwhip after him to keep him in bed. She chuckled. He sounds stubborn like someone else I know. Yeah, he grunted. I'm afraid my dad's too much for Cynthia to handle all by herself. I'll be glad to help. He looked at her like she'd sprouted another head. Well, I can help. she said defensively, feeling dejected that he discounted her abilities. She was capable of so much more than he realized, if only he would give her the chance to prove it. He flashed a grateful smile. That's sweet of you to offer, but Shauna's coming over later on this afternoon. She's going to stay here for a few days and help Cynthia with Dad's care. She bristled. Shauna's coming here? He tensed. Yeah, why? The hot fury that erupted over her was so swift that it made her dizzy. A deep furrow appeared between his brows, and she could see frustration darken in his eyes. What's up with you? Resentment twisted over her features. This has nothing to do with Luther. Shauna's coming here so she can get her hooks into you. That's ridiculous. Is it? She's been after you from day one. Now she's setting up camp here. Tears burned her eyes. Are you so blind that you can't see this for what it is, or are you just plain stupid? He let out a humorless laugh. You know what? I don't have time for this. Rage boiled in his eyes as his jaw went rock hard. My dad is fighting for his life, and all you can think about is yourself and your petty jealousy. Petty jealousy? She slung her hair back, nostrils flaring. This has nothing to do with jealousy. This is about me calling it like it is. Her voice cracked. I won't sit by silently while she tries to take you away from me. He stood, a weary look on his face. Like I said, I don't have time for this. This conversation is over. He stalked out of the room. Brooke stepped onto the front porch, hugging her arms. The sun was setting behind the horizon, washing everything in a soft gold. She regretted the things she had said to Nash almost the moment they came out of her mouth. Even though she was spot on about Shauna's intentions, she should have known better than to goad Nash, especially when he was so worried about his dad. When she saw them walk onto the front porch, she decided to go after him and apologize. She was about to round the corner of the wraparound porch when she heard the masculine voices floating in the evening air. She realized it was Nash and Luther talking. Disappointment settled over her. Nash was not alone. She'd have to wait until later tonight to talk to him. She was about to turn around and go back inside when she heard her name. She froze, straining to hear. Son, facing death makes a man take a second look at things. I've done you a big disservice, and I need to set things right, Luther said. The only reason you agreed to marry Brooke was because you knew how desperate I was to save the ranch. I know how much you love Shauna, and it was wrong for me to keep y'all apart. I was being selfish, and I hope you can forgive me. Brooke clutched her chest as tears sprang to her eyes. So it was true. Nash loved Shauna. All this time he was only pretending to love her. The bitter hurt was more than she could take. I'm releasing you from this ridiculous agreement, Luther continued. I'll call Stuart in the morning and straighten the whole thing out. Then you and Shauna can be together. Brooke let out a strangled cry. Then she heard movement and saw Nash standing there, a shocked look on his face. Brooke, he uttered. Save it, she shrieked, and then turned and ran. The pounding of the hooves matched the beating of her frenzied heart as Brooke leaned forward and urged the horse to go faster and faster. Tears streamed down her face, getting matted into her hair. Darkness was settling in, and she could hardly see 2 feet in front of her, but she didn't care. All she cared about was riding until the searing hurt stopped. How could she have been so stupid? She'd opened up her heart to him, and he'd trampled it all over again. Nash didn't love her. He'd been playing her, biding his time until he could be with his precious Shauna. She heard a sound from behind. She glanced over her shoulder and saw another rider gaining on her. She dug her heels into Honeybee's side, urging her to go even faster. Then she felt a dip where the ground should have been. Honeybee let out a squeal and then reared back on her hind legs. The motion sent Brooke catapulting backwards, and then came the blinding pain as her head struck a rock. Everything went black. Okay. Boy, this is getting really exciting. I almost wish we could go ahead and read the next chapter, the last chapter, but I guess we'll wait until tomorrow. Okay, does Nash love Shauna, or does he love Brooke? Okay, of course, Brooke was, yes, a little bit rash, but I could totally understand where she's coming from. And for the record, I do think she's right. I do think that Shauna is trying to get her hooks into Nash. But, yeah, that really wasn't a good time to goad him with him being upset about his dad. So, okay, find out what happens tomorrow as I read the final chapter. Here's to keeping it sweet and swoony. See y'all tomorrow.